G'day YouTube, we're here for another build rundown. This time we have an absolute treat for you. One of my all-time favorite bikes to work on, a Ducati GT1000. This is part of our Signature Series, so I'm really looking forward to taking you through all the details on this epic build. Welcome into the Purpose-Built Moto Garage. I'm Tom Gilroy, let's get going. Starting on the tail of this bike, one of my favorite pieces. Now you're gonna hear me say the words favorite piece a lot in this video because there's a lot on this bike that I'm absolutely in love with. The tail section was one of the first parts that we've worked on. So what we did was trim the subframe and rebuild it into a lighter looking, sort of more angular shape. From the outset, our client Ramel wanted to make sure that this bike was really sort of modern and racy, but still had that classic sort of feel to it. So we've worked really hard to blend some of the modern features that we've used here with a lot of really classic shapes. And part of that was the tail and tank combo. So Ramel was really adamant that he wanted to keep the Ducati GT1000 tank, and I can't blame him, it's a really beautiful piece. Well done, Ducati design engineers. So what I wanted to do was go and take a bit of that style and form my own tail off of that, using it as a bit of inspiration. So what we did with the subframe was slim out the top section a bit using some smaller bars. We've sort of retained the shape, but we've slimmed out the seat section a bit, and then it comes to an abrupt finish just behind the seat. The way we've mounted this tail is a little bit different. What we've done here is used a set of dowels that come out of the end of the frame rods, and then a couple of bolt-on brackets that go along this line here. You can sort of just see them in the seat gap there. So this means that when you unbolt those screws, the tail sort of slides off this way, and that was done because of the exhaust that we wanted to build. We couldn't have a tail hoop here if I wanted to fit an undertail exhaust. Now this is a really difficult part of the process for me, not having built anything exactly like this before. I knew I wanted to have an undertail exhaust, but I didn't know exactly where it would end up, and then I knew that I wanted it to be sort of integrated into the tail cowl. I was stuck there for a little while, and what I figured out was I had to sort of go backwards and build the exhaust first. So once the subframe was finished, I moved on to fabricating the headers. Now this is the third GT1000 that I've built now, and I've sort of developed a bit of a way I like to do the exhaust. So instead of sweeping down low out of the front cylinder and sort of underneath the motor, I like to keep it quite high and come in tight on that crankcase. In this case, that's allowed me to curve in nice and sharp and then go up to exit out the tail. The hard part was the rear cylinder. And luckily the swing arms on these things have a big gap that the exhaust is meant to pass through. So the rear cylinder here, and I'll get you a bit of a close up on this as I'm talking, but the rear cylinder comes out and goes down and then does a pretty sharp little U-turn. We've utilized a lot of pie cuts here to get that bend radius nice. And then it comes up with the 2-into-1 section on the back here before it exits out on the tail. Another thing that we've done here that you'll notice on the crank breather is we've built a venturi off the 2-into-1 joint in the exhaust. Now, that was done on the advice of a couple of mates of mine that are really into Ducatis, and a good performance mod that you can do on these motors is helping them breathe easily, and that sort of creates a negative pressure in the crank, which is, you know, in a roundabout way is supposed to let your engine move more freely. So what I didn't realize, we actually didn't quite design this right. We've just done a direct venturi. What we should have done, I think, was put an actual catch tank on the venturi that then runs in, because that's going to stop a lot of the oil sputter. We do have a one-way valve that should stop most of it, but the road test so far, we haven't seen too much smoke blowing out the back, but a couple of my racer mates at Cube Ducati, when they did the dyno tune, said that it could be a drama. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on going forward. So once I had the headers shaped up with my two pipes, and then we built the mufflers. So the idea was always to have a lot of black on this bike, and the headers were going to go ceramic black. We knew that. What I wanted to do was sort of have this really racy looking twin tail pipes exiting, and then this is the muffler section under the tail here. So we've hand built these out of stainless steel tube, polished them up nice, and in this sort of 350, 400 mil section here is your muffler. This Ducati definitely sounds pretty beasty. It's probably on the upper level of how loud I like my bikes, but the client didn't matter and the sound out of it is incredible, so I let it be. We'll move on to explaining how we built this tail section now. So as I was shaping this tail, what I started with was the backing plate and then the top shape. So I sort of shaped a foam buck that sat over our muffler sections here. And keep in mind, none of this was really finished yet. It was all just like floating around. I have a really difficult time sometimes visualizing the end product because I don't draw anything. I have to see it in the metal. So that sort of sometimes slows down the process, but it is what it is for me. And you know, the way I do things is why our bikes turn out like they do. So I sort of just tend to trust the process and go at it the only way I know how. So with this, I had the top shaped up and I started to form the sheet metal. So we have been mucking around a bit more with custom sheet metal forming, and this is probably my most difficult piece to date. It was actually quite a tough shape to create, especially with all the intricacies of having the fairing cupped over the mufflers, and it sort of slides off. It's actually a really nice fit in there that I'm pretty proud of. So I'll pop this seat off now so you can see just how this all goes together. So we have our wiring, and usually in this area you would have all of your electrics and your sort of black box trays and stuff. But what we had to do was move all of that a little bit rearward because you've got a huge and sort of ugly fuel pump right here. So the exhaust travels up and you've got a bracket there, and then the electrics are all housed in the tail. Because we've got a muffler and an electrics box in such close proximity, we had to do a lot of heat proofing. So on both sides of that tail cowl, we've got some heat matting that sort of limits the heat that the ECU and my black box will cop in there. The last little piece on this tail here was actually done quite a bit after the sheet metal shaping was finished, was the lighting. So what we've done here is I've had designed and CNC machined a tail light section here, and then we've also housed and Frenched in a set of our new indicators. These will be called the Omni lights. We've been road testing them for a while. They're going to be a new product that we're releasing for you guys pretty soon, so keep an eye on the website and the newsletters about that. But all of this sort of added to this super sleek and really tidy tail, and then the only thing we had to worry about mounting down on the wheel was a number plate and a little number plate light. Next thing on the fabrication list was the chin spoiler and the underbody fairing. This was something that from the very start I knew that I wanted to do on this bike to really add to that sort of cafe racer and more modern race bike feel that we were trying to blend with this GT1000. Now this is a super fun piece for me to create. It was, you know, it's a big enough area, gave me a bit of room to work and create some nice shapes, especially this little sort of like exit for the pipe here. Hello Lola. And I was able to add a little bit of detail with these eyelets that we had painted up in that really nice yellow that we've used. This fairing also houses your battery and the regulator rectifier. So because we didn't have much room underneath the tank or anything, we had to make sure that we'd hide as much of the mess on this bike as we possibly could. So we've built a little inbuilt battery box, and then to get at it, there's just 3 screws at the front here. That mesh plate comes off, and then you can access your battery and regulator if you need to. I'll start to take you guys through some of the front end fabrication now, so I'll flip this bike around, you can get a better view. Now let's get going on the front end here. So the last bit of fabrication that I really took care of on this bike was the headlight mount and headlight cowl. So because we'd moved the ignition onto this other side, we had a really nice gap here that one of our Daytona W gauges perfectly fit in. So that's where we utilized the bit of space here so we could keep the front end of this really nice and slim. We didn't have to worry about hiding a gauge anywhere. So I've made up the bracket to house our 7-inch headlight, both our indicators, and then shaped up a nice aluminium fairing here, again adding to that sort of semi-fairing cafe racer look. With that done, it was time for me to jump onto another project, and I let Donnie have at it on a few of the finishing touches for our GT1000 build. The first being this epic fairing. So we've shaped up using one of our aluminium fairings, but you see a lot of our bar mounts done on our front fairings usually. We haven't gone that route on this bike, but what we've done instead is use some sheet metal to shape up the bracket. So again, this is more of like a sport bike style, having a fully enclosed fairing rather than bar mounts, but for this bike, it suits the build perfectly. So we've done firstly an internal bracket, and then we've done an external bracket, sort of giving it a winged vent fairing sort of look. It's a bit of a weird thing. It has no practical function, but I think it's a really epic piece on this build, something really different, but strangely it works really well and sort of suits the rest of the style of this bike. So with that done, we moved on to a really strange and unique problem that you have to tackle when you build a GT1000. Generally in your frame triangle here is where your airbox sits on most other bikes. Not on a Ducati though, all of that's hidden up under the tank. So on the airbox, we've used a Star Ace Performance airbox modification that sort of helps to get more air into the airbox and the filter quicker. So it's sort of like a high velocity intake, I think he calls it. And Star Ace is an Italian design engineer. I found his parts, they look really good. So we've used a kit there in conjunction with a DNA pod filter. Sorry, I misspoke. It's not a pod filter, it's a standard DNA replacement filter for the Ducati GT1000. So that's what we've done on the intake side. And then when it comes to this triangle here, you've got a god-awful looking fuel pump and there's hoses hanging out. So what we tried to do, instead of hiding it, which we attempted at the start, I started to shape up some side covers, and I got about halfway through making the first cover and I thought, this looks horrible. We're trying to hide something here that really sort of doesn't need to be hidden, and it's affecting like the flow of the frame and the whole look of the bike. So that went in the bin and we restructured our idea and came up with this. What we've made here is an aluminium cover that goes over the fuel pump and hoses. So this clips up and screws onto a bracket that we've made at the back here that also holds some of our electrics and an exhaust mount. And then on the front here, when you've installed the tank, it bolts onto a little bracket that we've put that bolts onto the fuel pump section. So your hoses, you can get them up in there. We've put a nice bit of stainless steel heat shielding over there, some braid that sort of dresses it up a little bit and makes it so you don't actually need to hide it all that much. And it's actually become a really cool piece of the bike, because from the normal customs that you see made out of GT1000s, that's always something that I look at and think, God, there's got to be something that you can do about that. And that's what we've decided. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It's always good to see an idea come through and work exactly how you wanted it to. So while Dylan was working on that fuel pump cover, I was in the office designing these belt covers. So we did away with the plastic ones. We've done up like a trellis designed cover here. These are water jet cut out of aluminium. We've got a nice little detail on that Ducati logo near the top spark plug. And then on the front here, we've worked in some PBM branding too. This is one of those pieces that sort of takes a little while to do, but a real sort of standout, and details matter on these sort of builds. So that's what we were going for. So once the belt covers were designed and fabricated, we'd actually drop the engine and strip some cases. GT1000s have this really horrible powder coat finish on the cases and barrels, so that had to come off. Everything was stripped back to bare metal, so we could lay down some nice gloss black on the motor for when it came time to fit and finish off the build. It was all going to fit together nicely. So moving from the engine onto a few more of the performance upgrades, you'll notice that this thing is wearing a full suite of Öhlins suspension. What we've done on the front end here is utilize a late model Ducati Monster 1200 front end, which came standard with Öhlins. So we've used basically the whole front clip. We've unbolted the entire GT front end and bolted this one straight on. We're using the standard Monster triple clamps and brakes because those are really good bits of gear. Then we've upgraded the brake rotors front and back using some red mist rotors. These are really good performance parts we get out of the US. And then of course the Jonich wheels, which are a new product that they've released, a Jonich Carbon. So these are a fat spoke aluminium rim that they've actually wrapped in a carbon coating. So it is legitimate carbon fiber, but you're not relying on just that for the rim. It's more of a style piece. So we've gone with the black hub, black spoke, and then the carbon fiber rim, which really offsets, and you'll see when I run you through the paint, we've added a few more carbon fiber details throughout the build. So on the top clamp here, we've gone with a set of LSL bars and risers. We've gone for a set of Brembo upgraded calipers. These are aftermarket bits that we've got. Purpose-built Moto 3-button switches. We've used the scrambler mirrors and a nice bar end mount here. And then we've got a set of custom grips that we've made to match in with the perforated leather that Timeless Auto Trim's done for us on the seat. So he just sends us back a couple of offcuts of his leather and we custom wrap those grips. So Jamison from Timeless Auto Trim's done the seat here for us, knocked it out of the park yet again, using a style that we've used before on an old GT1000. So you've got your, really crispy leatherwork as they always get, and then you've got a really nice little aluminium detail. So this is just a polished aluminium strip that's sewn into the seat. It just sort of adds a little bit more complexity to the design, and something that I really like to do, because oftentimes you'll see a seat on a bike and it's just a bit of plain leather slapped on there, but a little bit of thought and a bit of design time and it really comes out nice and just adds a little bit of that extra touch that we like. So you'll notice we kept quite a bit of foam on this seat. Romel's a pretty tall guy, so we had to make sure during this build that we created enough room for him to sit on this bike. And part of that was, once we'd done all these modifications, set the seat height, we had him in to sit on the bike, and we realized that the foot pegs, as they were on the standard setup, were a little too high. So what we've had to do is move them back a little bit and then drop them down about 30 or 40 mil. This is a pretty easy job, considering that Ducati give you a lot of mounts to work with. So you've got 2 on the side of the engine here that we've used also for our underbody fairing. And then, hello Lola, we've got 1 that's up on the frame. So using a bit of stainless steel bar work, we were able to mount a set of Cognito Moto rear sets on here, utilize the factory brake master cylinder, and all of this worked up seamlessly. We had to make a custom linkage for the shifter on the other side, but that's a half an hour job. It's not really that much. But in terms of putting in that effort to make sure our rider can ride this thing for as long as he wants without getting uncomfortable, definitely worth the while. So as we were putting this thing together, we needed brake pads, we needed a new clutch master cylinder, we needed a new fuel cap to go with this nice paint job that we were working up. So we went to my mates at Moto. These guys are setting up a really nice new store. They do a lot of Ducati OEM parts, so any of the service materials we need came from Moto, and then they're doing a lot of race performance upgrade parts too. You got to check out their website. They're a local business here on the Gold Coast, and they're setting up to go big. They're making the process of ordering OEM Ducati parts and then performance gear for your race bike super easy. I highly recommend them. They have a lot of connections that you just can't get in Australia, and they're bringing all of that in-house. So make sure you check out Moto, and thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. Now, as we were finishing up the fab work and all of this was coming together, we had the wheels and tires on. We knew that this bike was going to be pretty special, so we had to make sure that this paint job knocked it out of the park. We went and started to work up a concept with Justin from Pop Bang Classics, and I'm happy to say he absolutely nailed the brief. What we've done here is utilize a predominantly black paint job and offset it with a really nice Ferrari yellow from the 90s. You see those old cars in movies and stuff that have that yellow that just absolutely pops, and I wanted to make sure that we added some details on this thing to make it really stand out. Part of that was the yellow, but a bigger part of that was this incredible carbon fiber inlay that Justin's done on the paint job. So if you come in here and have a bit of a look, I'll go through exactly what's being done. Now, there was a lot of steps to making this work. First of all, the body work had to be done and prepped to lay down the primer on everything, and then the carbon fiber needed to be laid down. This was just done over the existing body parts. Nothing really special had to happen there, but then that had to be gone over and smoothed out once it was cleared and then painted over. So there was an extra probably 3 or 4 steps in this paint job that normally wouldn't exist. It was a bit difficult to work up the shapes of this bike. You have a lot of really predominant metal curves, especially on this tail here, sort of going in with the tank shape. And to make that set with the decals that we wanted to do took a good couple of tries. So Justin got the tank on the first go, but I had to go out there and we basically just sat the parts on the bench and started drawing lines until something stuck. And I think we really nailed it on this tail. Another thing that we had to work in with the paint was the Öhlins shocks. They come in that standard Öhlins yellow that just didn't work. Having those 2 different shades sat so close together, I wasn't quite happy with. So one of the last minute decisions that we made was to rip off the springs and color code them with the rest of the bike. That's going to wrap it up on our latest GT1000 Signature Series build, guys. I'm going to start this thing up and give it a bit of a run right now, and then we'll take you out for a test ride. You can probably already tell with the performance work that we've done on this bike, the suspension upgrades, the test ride was incredible. I can't wait to show you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Purpose Built Moto has built a great community of both riders and builders around what we do. Whether you love our builds, you use our parts on your project, or you're just here for the content that we create on social media, thanks for being part of our tribe. Next time you're in the garage planning out your build, or you're just tinkering around, make sure you jump on to purposebuiltmoto.com, support the cause and grab a few parts for your pride and joy.